KNES 560 graduate power mechanics. How you living? How you doing? I hope everybody's doing well. And I'm viewing my job is to not get in the way too much of you guys completing the semester with sound mind. All right. So short, sweet, to the point. Let's make sure that we get you through this as easily as possible, stress-wise. All right. So muscles can only pull. What makes them pull? Well, you guys remember from physiology, they got the little cilia things, the little contractile components, and you can control them through the length, but also innervation. But then you have this other magical property, the stretchy stuff, the rubber band-like material. We call those the elastic properties, okay? You have stretchy stuff. Tendon is stretchy stuff. All that mycelium that goes through the muscle is stretchy stuff. In fact, the stretchy stuff inside the muscle belly is a continuation of the same material that the tendon's made of. So the tendon just kind of passes through and out the other end if need be. But these stretchy materials, just like rubber bands, have force characteristics where if you stretch them, they build up stored elastic potential energy, and that energy of wanting to return to its original shape. And there's a time component where you play with silly putty, you see this, where you stretch it and it stays straight, but after a few seconds it starts to sag down. So you can, just as you can generate stored elastic potential energy, you can lose that stored elastic potential energy. There's a reason that like a boxer is going to stretch these muscles back and then immediately turn around and go pow, right? Because you build up stored elastic potential energy, so then therefore you got to return that investment. If the boxer just stayed like this for a few seconds, they wouldn't be as powerful in their movement, okay? So that's kind of important when we talk about phases of practical motions or activities. Typically you have a preparatory phase, a prep phase. Then you have an action phase, and then you have a follow-through phase. And basically the action phase, I'm going to start in the middle. It's easy to start in the middle to me, and you work off of it. But the action phase is actually moving when you're trying to accomplish whatever the heck you're trying to accomplish. If it's the case of a punch, the action phase is literally bringing my hand to what I'm trying to punch. If the action or the skill is to shoot a free throw, well, the action phase is going to be literally what brings the ball up eventually out of my hand, right? So if you understand what the action phase is, in the email, the vertical jump, right? Well, the action phase is going to literally be the motions that get me up in the air. So if you understand what the action phase is, then the prep phase is what puts you in a position to do the action. So if the action phase of the vertical jump is going to be when I actually have bilateral hip and knee extension, getting me to go up as high as I can in the air, then the prep phase is going to be what gets me to the point right before I go up. So the prep phase would be going down so that you could turn around and jump up. And then the follow through is everything that happens after you've done the action. In other words, once I leave the ground and I can no longer make myself go any higher up, all that extra stuff that has no effect is follow through. Here, another example of follow through is, a golfer is trying to hit the golf ball right on the tee, and they do this motion and they hit the ball with the club. Well, once the ball leaves the club, there's nothing you can do unless you are a Jedi or unless your last name is Potter. There's nothing you can do to influence. That ship has sailed. That ball is done. There's nothing you can do. Oh, I didn't do this with my arm, and I need to in basketball, we used to say, put the hand in the cookie jar. Once the ball leaves your hand, you are done influencing the ball. So what is follow through? If follow through doesn't affect the action, follow through can be viewed of what do motions look like if you did the action phase certain ways. What I mean by that is from a coaching perspective, if I use proper mechanics of my free throw and I do the action phases the way my coach is trying to get me to do it, if I do all these action phases the right way, the follow through will thus look a certain way. So in other words, you could use follow through as a benchmark or as a tool to help action. But follow through itself has nothing to do with the action. The ship is sailed, it's done. Again, you see this in sport all the time. Someone will shoot a shot and they'll lean to the right as if the ball can look back and say, wait, that way? You want me to go that way? Okay, I got you. You know, if I lean to the right, somehow it's going to make the ball lean to the right. Maybe it's an instinct thing. Baseball, we see this too. You hit the ball and it's getting close to the line. You're just like, the ball's looking back. Wait, this way? Okay, man. So prep, action, follow through. That segues to basic movement strategies. I'm going to post, even though you can find this on the 415 thing on the support materials. I have it's only like 3 pages. Movement strategies, simultaneous, sequential, and then a combination of both. This is so simple. Simultaneous movement strategies is exactly what it sounds like. Multiple joint motions moving at the same time. Why would you want to use multiple joint motions moving at the same time? Because you're trying to be accurate with your movement, or you're trying to be very forceful with your movement. What's the most accurate punch in boxing? The jab. Why? Because it's moving elbows and shoulders at the same time. And the real magic, it's real unbelievably simple, is that if I only move my elbow, my hand is going to move away from my target. If I only move my shoulder, my hand is going to move away from the target. Not only that, if I move my elbow, my hand is going to move away from the target this way. If I just move my shoulder, my hand's going to move away from the target this way. So what happens when I move my hand away from the target this way at the same time as I do that way? They cancel each other out. They cancel out rotation, and they summate translation, and you get this. Cancelization of rotation and summatization of translation. Accuracy, simultaneous movement. Okay? If you did both of those movements sequenced, that's the next thing. Joint motions happening one after the other. If you did those motions in sequence, it would look something like this. But at the same time, it's the same motions, but if they're done at the same time, you get accuracy. So where does force, optimal application of force, come from? Well, if you're trying to deliver as much energy as possible into something, you kind of want to be accurate with it. In other words, if you're trying to do a max bench press, don't you kind of want all your energy to be pushing up? You don't want to waste any energy up, down, left, right, front, back. If you're trying to move a car that's stuck, right? Think about it. You're giving all of your force. You want to be accurate. You want to try to put, you don't want to waste any force down or up. Sometimes there's some reasons to do up, but that's to mess with the friction. But the point is, if you're delivering force, you want to be accurate. So force and accuracy kind of come hand in hand. It's logical to want to be accurate with any maximum effort of force. But you can be accurate without having to have maximum effort of force. An example of that is throwing a dart at a dartboard. Right? You're playing darts, like regulation darts. It's not that far. The board's not that far. You're probably not going to throw that dart like you would a baseball. It's hard to be accurate. That dart's going blood squirting. You're probably going to make more of a simultaneous movement strategy, elbows and shoulders happening at the same time to cancel out the rotations and summate the translations. Okay? So the dart isn't very heavy, but for accuracy, you want to try to have movement strategies that happen at the same time. Cancel out rotations, summate translations. Okay? A lot easier to be accurate. Well, what's the other end of the spectrum? If simultaneous movement is good for force and or accuracy, the opposite is, I don't care about being accurate. I want to go fast, like Talladega Nights. Anybody want to go fast? Ricky Bobby, I want to go fast. But before we get to the actual movement strategy, it's hard to go fast and be accurate in anything you do. The faster you try to finish something, the more mistakes you're going to make. And it's the same thing in the human body. Sequenced motion is one joint motion done after the other for the benefit of summating velocities, getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until your distal segments, hands or feet, are moving as fast as they can possibly move, thanks to all the different joint motions that put them in that position. Okay? Easiest way to think about this is a towel. If I have a towel and I threw that towel simultaneously, right? It's going to go where I want it, but it's just going to kind of like fly at a very slow speed. But if I want to do some damage, pow, right? Whip that towel. The whole towel doesn't go fast, only the tip, only the distal tip is moving faster than sound to get that sonic boom. All the other pieces of the towel kind of contributed a little bit. They sacrifice their part so that the distal part can get the glory, or the trouble if you get in trouble for popping someone you shouldn't pop into. That's a different conversation. So how do we whip towels? Well, I'm going to show you how to whip, but I will not show you how to nay-nay. But how we whip towels in throwing is, we call it proximal to distal sequencing. I'm going to start off with my lower extremity. I'm going to summate motion. The baseball needs to move 90 miles an hour. That means my fingers need to move 90 miles an hour. That's the tip of the towel. So I'm going to have joint motions that contribute to it. I'm going to push off. That's going to speed up the ball. Then I'm going to transverse pelvic girdle rotate. That's going to speed up the ball. Then I'm going to transverse trunk rotate. That's going to speed up the ball. Then I'm going to do some scapula stuff to speed up the ball. And then this is really where the magic comes. I'm going to internally rotate my shoulder, and then that ball's going to, maybe not for me because I don't have any more range of motion. But the point is that shoulder rotation doesn't happen when my hips rotate. It happens in sequence. The hip is going to abduct. Then my pelvis is going to transverse rotate. Then my trunk is going to transverse rotate. Then my scapula is going to protract. Then my shoulder is going to internally rotate. Then my wrist is going to flex. It's done sequentially so that you can have this summative effect of maximum velocity. Think of it like this. If you were going to run faster than 70 miles an hour, which is real tough, just get in a bus. And the bus goes 70 miles an hour. And then all of a sudden, you go from the back of the bus and sprint to the front of the bus. Congratulations, you just ran faster than 70 miles an hour. That's an example of sequenced motion, where my hand can't go 90 miles an hour on its own, but it can piggyback. It can take a trip on the hip bus and then summate that to my pelvic bus and then summate that, and everything's moving. And then finally, once that bus is going 85 miles an hour, my wrist can do 90. Okay? The trade-off is accuracy. It is hard to be super fast and super accurate. And there's obvious reasons. Is because any error your joints make proximally gets amplified distally. In other words, if my hips rotate a little bit too much or a little bit too little, that error gets amplified by the trunk, and then it gets amplified by the. And another thing too is you could think about what's one of those say whips. I'll think of it, but David killed Goliath with it. Sling. So if you're slinging rocks, you better, now the rock's going to go fast and it's dangerous, but you have to release it perfectly for it to have the tangential velocity in the direction you want to go. It's a learned trait. Can you be accurate and fast? Absolutely. Is it easy to be accurately and fast? Absolutely not. I'll give you two examples. Professional golfers dang near miss the fairway half the time. They're professionals. They are the best at what they do, and yet they can't hit it down the middle of the fairway. Why? Because it's tough to be accurate and fast. Professional baseball pitchers get paid millions of dollars, and sometimes they just cannot find the strike zone. They can't throw a strike. They're trying. Why? Because it is tough to be accurate and fast. Now, going back to simultaneous motion, this is the easiest one to look at: prep phase, action phase, follow through phase. Let's say I was going to do a chest pass in basketball. The prep, well, obviously the action phase is making the ball go to my teammate. So the prep phase is going to be anything that happens to set me up to go forward. So bringing the ball back, simultaneous motion, shoulders, elbows, blah, 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 blah. Action phase is actually bringing the ball, accelerating the ball, speeding up the ball, whatever you want to call it. And then the follow through is once the ball leaves me, what does it look like after? Everything happens together. Vertical jump, easy. Everything's happening together. You could say, well, the shoulders start to move first. You're right, and that's a power issue that's in the notes. But a sequenced motion, the prep actions and follow-throughs take place at different times. What I mean by that is you may have action of the pelvic girdle while you're prepping the trunk, and then you have action of the trunk while you're prepping the shoulder, and then you have action of the shoulder while you're prepping the wrist. You could have follow through of the pelvis while the trunk is actioning. It's like a sliding scale of prep, action, follow through. So that's how that works. Okay. So 100% we are keeping this simple. Is there a combination of all the way sequenced, all the way simultaneous? Yeah, that's power, because power lives in between strength and speed. So when you do simultaneous motions in sequence, powerful concepts. Sprinting is power. How do I know? Because you have simultaneous motions of legs and arms, ipsilateral, left leg, right arm, but it's done in sequence. My left arm, right leg, then my right arm, left leg. That's a sequence motion. So that's speed. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. Well, where's the accuracy? Well, don't you want to run straight? So my right arm and my left leg cancel out each other's angular momentum to help me go straight. In addition, that simultaneous motion happening here helps me push off a little bit harder on the ground. Thus, the ground pushes back on me a little harder. This combination, shot put, throwing something heavy as fast as you can. Dr. Kemp, I thought you have to make it go far. Well, to go far, you got to go fast. Throwing a shot put would be very powerful. A sequence of simultaneous motions. Lower extremity, then upper extremity. It's a sequence, okay? So hopefully these basic concepts can be applied into your skill. If we need to talk about it more, bring it on. 24-hour office hours. If I'm available and you're available, then we are available. All right, I'll do another micro lecture on some kinetic forces stuff. Guys, this should not be stressful. This should be fun. Let's make it fun. Let's get through this. Later.